Everyone. God is good. He's awesome in every mighty way. And I wanted to come on and talk to you about a couple of things. One of them is about a new law in Utah. Now, I'm not sure how many people that visit my channel actually live in Utah, but there is a new law that came out in Utah. And the reason why I'm talking about this is because every time, we turn around, a lot of the laws are geared towards um, helping women, which is nothing wrong with helping women, but how many laws are being created to help men, to lift up our men and to encourage men? And so I wanted to share this new Utah law requires dads to pay prenatal child support. This is coming from a writer, Sophia Eppolito, so I don't own the rights to this article, but I do want to share this. It's coming from Salt Lake City, and it says right here that biological fathers in Utah will be legally required to pay half of a woman's out-of-pocket pregnancy costs under a new law unique to the state that critics say doesn't do enough to adequately address maternal health care needs. And it goes on to say that the bill's sponsor has presented the measure as an effort to decrease the burden of pregnancy on women and increase responsibility of men who have children. But some critics argue the new legislation won't help women who are most vulnerable and could make abusive situations even more dangerous for pregnant women. Utah appears to be the first state to mandate prenatal child support, according to the state's Planned Parenthood Association and the bill's sponsor. But a few states, including Wisconsin and New York, have provisions that can result in fathers being financially responsible for pre-birth expenses. Men, even though you may not live in Utah, but guess what? A lot of times when bills are passed in certain states and it gets exposure and it goes public with it, when they decide to share it with the public, guess what happens? A lot of other states start to look into it, some jump on board with it, and those bills get passed in other states. So it's really important for you as men to really decide if you want to have children out of wedlock, meaning you are in a non-marital legal union. You may want to start considering, how to protect yourself even more, or evaluate your situation as far as when you get involved with someone intimately, because you will be on the hook for helping pay prenatal child support. And so it's really important for you to really think about this, men. If you don't have a problem with it, fine. But if you are limited in your finances, you're struggling already, you already have children, or you're not even paying child support and you do have children, again, this bill, it's a new Utah law that requires dad to pay prenatal child support. And again, what I stated was this is a few states, including Wisconsin and New York, have provisions that can result in fathers financially responsible for pre-birth expenses. The bill, it goes on to say that Governor Spencer Cox, a Republican, recently signed the proposal, which received widespread support in the GOP-controlled legislature. Republican Representative Brady Brammer said he decided to sponsor the measure because he had grown frustrated with the number of anti-abortion measures going through the legislature and wanted to pursue legislation that will make it easier to bring life into the world. And it says we want to help people and actually be pro-life in how we do it as opposed to anti-abortion, Brammer said. One of the ways to help with that was to help the burden of pregnancy be decreased. So the bill would apply to a pregnant woman's health insurance premiums and any pregnancy-related medical costs, Brammer said. If the paternity of the child is disputed, fathers won't be required to pay until after paternity is established. the father also wouldn't be financially responsible for the cost of an abortion received without his consent unless it's necessary to prevent the death of the mother or if the pregnancy was the result of rape. So, Father, these are some key issues right here in this article. Are fathers that plan on, having children, or if you plan on engaging in activity that can result in the birth of a child, you won't have to pay if you dispute the paternity unless, prior to the DNA, once, paternity is established. You also wouldn't be financially responsible for the cost of an abortion received without your consent unless it's necessary to prevent the death of the mother, or if the pregnancy was the result of rape. And I think that a woman does have a choice when it comes to if she was raped, if she wants to proceed with having a child or not. I mean, that is something that, has been debated as far as if a woman is raped, should she have an abortion or not. I can't put myself in anybody else's shoes on that, but I certainly wouldn't want to have a child by someone that forcefully, did something like that to me. Now, as far as abortion, I know that there have been situations where, or incidents where women have went on and got an abortion without the man even knowing it. And some, new fathers or, prospective fathers wanted to raise their child and they didn't have a say so in it. So I think that is important that men, you really, consider, what you're doing. And as adults, you have a choice, but to just know that this information is out here. And it also says in Utah, mothers already have the option to seek support related birth expenses through the courts, but few do. And we've seen that if you watch Judge Lauren Lake, some women do go to court and ask for half expenses. And then some men go and ask for the half expenses back when it's determined that the father is not, determined that the man is not the father when once paternity has been established. So this is something that's already in place, but very women, pursue it, says Lisa Stockdale, which is actually true. If you watch Lauren Lake again, Judge Lauren Lake, there has been some cases on there where the woman was, had sued in court once paternity was established. She was able to recuperate some of the money, birth expenses she had incurred. And then also there was a case where this young man was not the father, and he actually won his case because he was not the father. And so, and the woman laughed it off and was all nonchalant about it, but she actually knew he wasn't the father. And that's the other thing too we have to look at, and this is with men. We see a lot of women making up stories about who's the father, who isn't, when they're actually sleeping around, and they're making up stories. They don't really know who the father is, and they just pick somebody who's the best choice, who's going to be the best provider, and then you have women that, that think it's funny and there's no consequences when they make up stories about who the father, the paternity of their child is. And some of them already know, but when they get a man that is willing to, help because he is a possibility until the actual DNA comes about, the women sometimes think it's funny when the DNA test results are read and that man is not the father. There should be some consequences for that. Not not just getting the money back, but getting the money back, but there should be some consequences for a lot of the things that we see going on with in our society with women making up stories about things, and there is no consequences. So men, it's going to be up to you to really get involved and start taking back your livelihood and getting back in the driver's seat, when it comes to these type of laws that are being passed and the laws that are in place where men are at a disadvantage. And it goes on to say in this article that The director of state's Office of Recovery Service, which is Lisa Stockdale, which typically collects child support. She said mothers will now have the option to also seek pregnancy-related payments through the legal system, but it's unclear how often they will pursue it. And she also goes on further to say, I don't know how often it will be used. Excuse me. Stockdale said, that's yet to be seen how often parents will choose to pursue these calls, but certainly if they do, we're here to collect. So they're going to be there to collect, and the bill is not intended to lower the frequency of abortions, but Brammer said that could be a potential result. Anti-abortion activists have lauded the bill, however, saying it will protect the lives of unborn children by supporting women through their pregnancy. Marilee Boyack, chairman of the Abortion Free Utah Coalition, says she hopes this bill will decrease abortions in the state by lessening economic pressures on new moms. And she goes on to say, or he goes on to say that anything we can do to support women in these circumstances will help them be able to give birth to their babies, feel good about that choice, and feel supported along the way, Boyack said. The new legislation comes on top of a long list of restrictions Utah has placed on abortion. Last year the state approved a measure that would make abortions illegal if the U.S. Supreme Court overturns the decades-old ruling that legalized it nationwide. The Utah measure would make it a felony to perform the procedure except in cases involving rape, incest, and serious threat to the life of a mother. So it's like they're also interfering in the rights of a woman to decide to be pro-choice or not. And then the other Republican-governed states have been considering an array of tough anti-abortion restrictions this year. Sweeping abortion bans have already been signed into law in South Carolina and Arkansas. And that's what I was saying, is usually when states go public, with something that they're doing, if a bill has passed through, guess what? Then other states get on board with it as well. And Democratic lawmakers and women's rights activists have questioned whether the new legislation on fathers helping to cover costs would actually meet women's needs. Planned Parenthood spokeswoman Katrina Barker said she supports giving women more financial support, but said there are better ways to help women, like expanding Medicaid, access to contraception, and providing paid parental leave. Barker also says she doesn't believe this legislation will lead to fewer women having abortions because the cost of pregnancy are typically small compared with the cost of raising a child. In the grand scheme of things, having a child and raising them to adulthood is going to be a lot more money, Barker said. And the average cost of raising a child is like, what, $233,000? Let's see, $233,610, something at that effect. And that doesn't even, include if the child is going to go to college or not. So that excludes the cost of college. So for a middle income family, according to a 2015 report from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the cost of an abortion can range from being free up to $1,000 depending on location and whether the mother has health insurance, according to Planned Parenthood. Now, this is according to Planned Parenthood, but if you go to somewhere else, it may cost you a lot more depending on how far along the woman is as well. But they also brought up domestic abuse tends to escalate during pregnancy, and seeking these costs could further increase stressors about financially supporting a baby, said Gabriella Archuleta, a public policy analyst with the YWCA of Utah. And YWCA is, it's the women's, YWCA, the YWCA, so which provides services to domestic violence survivors. And I know a couple of my friends have used the YWCA service, and the one they had in another city close by me, they actually became Family Services, a company or organization, by the name of FSA, bought them and changed the name to FSA instead of YWCA. And about 324,000 pregnant women are abused each year in the United States, according to data from the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, so OB-GYN. So Archuleta also noted that this measure doesn't equitably address the high cost of navigating the legal system and will likely only serve women who are wealthier or have wealthy partners. So there would be a situation where they would have to determine how can they serve the underprivileged women that need to have support but do not have the financial means to fight a court case, because it costs to file cases in a court. And so if you go to court, sometime depending on where you live, I guess you can request, your fees to be waived if you're receiving, receiving welfare. They call it a recipient. So anyway, it could be a problem for those that group of women that do not have, the financial means to go to court and file a suit to request, prenatal support. And on the surface of it, it sounds like a good idea, Archuleta said. But what we're here to do is look at some of the nuances and how it impacts women. And I don't think those nuances were really explored to the extent they should have been. And so this is coming from, again, the writer, the journalist is Eppolito. They're a corps member for the Associated Press for America's State House News Initiative. Report for America is a nonprofit national service program that places journalists in local newsrooms to report on undercovered issues. And then I wanted to talk about another article that I came across. Is this patient, excuse me, thinking of patient. I was writing a paper, and gosh, sometimes you still have that terminology in your head. Okay, and so there's another article. Let me get to that other article that I wanted to talk about. Thank you for your patience here. This is on Ronnie Long. This is a man that after spending 44 years in prison for a crime he didn't commit, this man says his life is worth more than $750,000. And again, this is a man that he actually spent all this time in prison, and they are only wanting to give him $750,000 because it's a cap on it. He sat in a North Carolina jail for 44 years for a crime he didn't commit. And now he is planning to fight a law that says he is only owed $750,000. So basically he wants to fight this law because they're telling him that's all he's owed. But Long, who is black, was accused of raping a white woman in 1976. An all-white jury found him guilty of rape and burglary and sentenced him to life in prison. And we've heard so many stories like this where black men are being sentenced in prison for a rape or a crime they didn't commit. So after maintaining his innocence and pursuing a lifetime of appeals and denied motions, he was released by a pardon from the governor in December 2020 after the courts found Long had been wrongly convicted. And let me just stop right there. I don't own the rights to this article, but I am talking about it in fair use, and bringing awareness, because as we know, as a black community and as black citizens in America, we see this happen a lot where black men are falsely accused and the evidence points that they're innocent, but yet still you have prosecutors who really, are, corrupt. And then you have deliberate police suppression of material evidence. And that's what really happened in this case. And it's since his sentencing, it says a trickle of post-trial disclosures has unearthed a troubling and striking pattern of deliberate police suppressions of material evidence. As I just stated, the U.S. Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals Judge Stephanie Thacker wrote. And so North Carolina law caps compensation at $750,000. But due to his innocence, state law requires that Long, he's now 65. He spent 44 years behind bars for a crime he didn't commit. But it says he's to be paid for the time he was kept in prison, set $50,000 a year, each year. So however, the sum is capped at $750,000. In Long's case, it means he stopped getting paid after his 15th year in prison. And while Mr. Long is grateful to receive compensation in that amount of $750,000, the amount is woefully inadequate. It's inadequate to compensate him after taking away more than 44 years of his liberty, Jamie Lau, Long's criminal attorney from his prior case, told CNN. He was in a cage when both his parents died, when his son had birthdays and graduations, and he lost everything for those 44 years, and certainly he deserves more than he has received. He long also told CNN he is hoping to fight the law and get what he deserves from a state that he believes intentionally put him in prison. Everything that transpired to put me behind bars was intentional, Long said. How is my case the same as someone who is exonerated with DNA? How can you say my life is only worth $750,000? There should never be a cap on a person's life. And when asked if anyone is helping him fight the law, Long said he wasn't going to name names, but there are several people who have reached out to him, but so far no lawmakers. He said it's like baking a cake, and currently he's trying to get all the ingredients together. It needs to be addressed because if it happens to me, it can happen to you, he said, adding he is going to shake trees to get what he deserves. And I want to say this is so true. If it can happen to him, it can happen to you. And we see this play out so much, now with people being men, or a lot of our black men being convicted even more because we have access to technology and social media. And so we see it a lot. So this man, if this doesn't prick a lot of men's hearts, and women that are sitting up here saying that these men are guilty just because someone comes out and says that they were sexually assaulted or raped or whatnot, and they come out, they have no proof, they never went to the police department, filed no reports, didn't get any examination done. And this is not to bash any real victims. I will never do that. But for these women that really are not, that don't have proof of this man is what he's saying is, if it can happen to him, it can happen to another man. So it's very important for men to stand up and fight and use their voices at this time. It's very critical that you do, and don't ignore us when we tell you, and help us fight, because we're standing behind you as black women, because a lot of us have black sons and nephews and uncles and fathers and things like that, and grandsons, and we don't want to see this happen to another black man. And it keeps happening over and over and over. And there's, and then we have a judicial system that's corrupt. And it is. We do see a lot of corruption in the judicial system. And so he said that it was intentional. And I believe that it was intentional. I don't know this man. He's definitely a stranger to me, but guess what? I mean, he was found innocent. After all of this, he was vindicated. And then his life is worth more than $750,000. There should never be a cap on something. That's the law. And if the law says that they owe him $50,000 for every year that he was incarcerated for something that was intentional, and they put him behind bars, even when the police was corrupt and they suppressed evidence, then he should get his due to him. You can't put a price on money, but he certainly deserves for them to pay him for the time that he was in there. And they need to follow the law. There shouldn't be no cap on anything when there's a law in place. And once again, they continue to violate the rights of, black men. Oh, we have a cap on this, so we can't pay you. But there's a law in place. So you're going to break the law in order to keep paying, or in order to prevent from paying him. You're still breaking the law. You broke the law to put him there, and you're still breaking the law to keep from compensating him. And it says Lau agrees that the law needs to be looked at and fixed, because Long is not the only one that this has happened to. And it's not. It actually is not. And it's not going to stop. We have to stand up and we have to use our voices. And men, again, I urge you, I invite you to step forward and start looking into these laws and speaking up. And when you see your fellow man going through some craziness and some bafoulet and some beeswax and some foolishness and foolery and anything else you want to call it, stand up and support them and look into it. Don't sit there and say, well, that's them, because it can happen to you. And how many men now it's happening to when they turned their back on, who, Mr. RSK, people, some of them have turned their backs, and some are saying, hey, I got to protect my brand. I understand all of that. But if it happened to them, it can happen to you. And this isn't a man that I don't believe he's a celebrity. He's an ordinary man. So you don't always have to have money for these things to happen. So at least 2 men have been exonerated after more than 44 years of incarceration, which highlights the inadequacy of the compensation statute and that cap, he said. It's also time to revisit the compensation statute as a whole, as the governor should not have full authority over who does and who does not receive compensation. A review process that is not political should be established so all men and women who have been wrongly convicted has a fair chance at compensation. And so long since he's been released, he's getting back into life since he's been released, transitioning. He has some happy, loving people around him, helping him to get where he needs to go. He was able to buy his dream car, and him and his wife are planning to buy a new home. And he says that he's living, he's amongst the living, he's walking testimony of a second chance. So God has given him a second chance. But again, we do need to value our lives and value the lives of others. And it's so important that these articles are brought forward and people are made aware of this information, because he seems to have been an average man. He's a human being, but he wasn't a celebrity or anything like that. Maybe to his family, he was a celebrity providing for his family until he was wrongly convicted. But he's not like, someone like R. Kelly or Bill Cosby, and all these other men. He's not like that in T.I.'s of the world. But again, he was falsely accused, and they intentionally, suppressed the evidence. So guess what? Corruption, judicial corruption, and we still see that today. So please leave your comments below. I appreciate everyone stopping by my channel and taking the time to share this video. Please share this video, and I'll leave the link in the comments on the information. Thank you very much, and God bless you all on today.